Welcome to the John McAllister Report, where John McAllister, top football evaluator, interviews college and high school coaches and athletes from around the country. Sit back and enjoy today's podcast.
Hello, I'm John McAllister with the John McAllister Report. Today, we're going to talk with former Executive Director of the OHSAA, Jerry Snodgrass. And the gist of the conversation today will be about officiating. And I'm picking Jerry's brain a little bit about, how to get more officials involved and maybe some red flags that we could use to help officials to get better, and involving coaches and parents and spectators and everything. So please sit back and enjoy a really interesting conversation with Jerry Snodgrass on officiating in Ohio. Mr. Jerry Snodgrass, how are you today?
Hey, it's great to be on, and I will tell you, from our longtime connection, I love what you do for high school sports. Love it.
Well, it's going to expand into sports, I think, rather than just football. So I'm happy with that. Coach, what I did is I wanted to talk to you about officials.
Mm-hmm.
I did a little bit of an article on it on Facebook, and people liked it. And I'm really concerned about officials because, it's lack of, and it's not just football, I've been told. I talk to officials before every game, and I'll mention that. And they say, well, it's other sports too. But tell me the major problem with high school football officials now. What's the major problem, Jerry?
Well, number one, I'll kind of revert back that everybody talks and everything you see is all about behaviors of fans. I think you and I both know behavior of fans, especially in football, hey, they're 20, 30 yards away from the field.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
And now, granted, there are social media posts and things like that, but so I don't think that is the number one problem. Secondly, and again, in the sport of football, is, people talk about the cost or the pay, that they get. I don't think you're ever going to reward officials' pay for what they do. You talk about the length of time it takes to go to a game. They go to the game, they work the game, they go out afterwards to eat probably, or have to catch something somewhere, and then they drive home. You're never going to get what the reward for that. That time value is something in today's society that's tough. My belief is it's stronger in that area where we have to face a fact. Doesn't every official think they're good? I mean,
they have to.
100%. I was going to say
they'll get eaten alive.
They must think they're good.
Right.
So they also feel that if they're good, they deserve to be rewarded. The reward comes for the games they get come tournament time.
Okay.
They can work a 10-game schedule. They can work all the JV freshmen. Obviously, they can. But the reward comes from the tournament assignments.
Right.
You know what? I don't fault that. I'm just saying that I believe that's true. I mean, my gosh, you're a better coach if you win a state tournament, aren't you? Never mind your talent. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So I think that is something that that's probably more pronounced in other sports. But in football, where not every single team is in that tournament, the pool of officials needed is greater for tournament time than it certainly is for regular season.
Right.
So I think that's an overriding factor that I know several people I realize several people, but several people that have gotten out of it because they're just sick, and they'll call it politics. I'm not here to, I do know how the process works. I do have that knowledge, but the fact that they don't get games along the way in certain things at certain levels of tournament, they just say it's not worth it anymore. So I think that's a big factor.
Okay. And that now, do coaches, they don't vote on officials anymore, do they?
They do. They do.
Football.
But yes, the biggest change that happened in the voting process a few years back, and I'm going to say probably even about 13, 14 years ago, the biggest change became voting created pools of officials.
Okay.
Rather than, it used to be in the old days, I'll make up a number, but if you needed 80 officials for a certain round of games, 80 people were in that group and they all got assigned. Okay. Now there's a pool. So different levels of games, whether it's regional, semis, regional, whatever. Actually in football, it's regional versus state, meaning state semifinal and final. The pool is larger than what is actually needed. So then that opens up the discussion about, okay, I'm making up a number, but if there's 120 officials in a pool and 80 are needed, who are the 80 that get the games?
Yeah.
And you get into basketball and some other sports where, you've got the divisions of sectional district tournaments, regional tournaments, state tournaments, those different pools. Again, I believe it's 1.25 or 1.5 times as many officials are in the pool that are needed.
Okay.
So then it still, though, becomes who gets those games out of that pool. So I think that's and I'm not saying right now that anybody's doing anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that's especially with it not being transparent.
Right.
I
think one thing on that, I always thought, and it won't happen, that crews, a 5-man crew, should work games after the season.
Right.
Because they're used, especially big, like the semifinals or the finals, a crew that's been together, instead of making a reward because they know each other and they work together for so long, they do a pretty good job. And nobody's auditioning for another, to make the great interference call or something like that.
Well, I do believe, to their credit, and I do believe, and this is true in basketball and some other sports, baseball, softball, that those crews that are together at the regional semis and finals, I'm again, I'll preface this with I'm not sure at what level, but they do advance on and they are together at the finals. That's I know in basketball, I'm a little bit more familiar with that one, in that crews are put together and they work through. That is a huge plus.
That's good. And let's go back to what you said. I've been told by officials that it's in football. I think other sports, maybe basketball with fans and stuff, I think coaches have more to do with young people getting out than anything else.
Yeah, I think
time, but I really think coaches, because and I'm on the sidelines for every game in my life except one, but in the football business. But tell them to get back. Coaches can be so intimidating to the younger officials.
Yes,
I don't think that's scary. I think that bugs them. They don't want that hassle.
Well, and I 100% agree. And you and I both. We're not pointing the finger and painting every coach with that same brush. Not at all. Far from it. But on the other hand, you're right. That's where a lot of the behavior issues are. And I'll go one step further. And again, you're talking about my brotherhood when I say the athletic directors, but 2 weeks ago, there's an athletic director that was ejected from the game. I won't say the school, but, and he had already been flagged during the game once. Then he's tossed. Then he gets something sent to the state association over him. And I hate to say this, but there's probably nothing they can do about that, when I say consequences to it.
Right.
But I struggle with that when it's an athletic director. Again, it's not all athletic directors, but I really don't think athletic directors have any business doing that at all. But again, you're talking about game personnel causing that issue, not the fans in the stands. So they're equally, maybe not equally, but there's a problem there too.
Yeah. Let's talk about, now we know the problem. Okay, let's talk about some possible solutions or some possible help. And I throw one to you, Jerry. How about training? How about what can we do to get more people at least interested or at least checking out football, basketball? There are 28 sports, 14 sports, 2 teams in the high schools, 28 total. Okay, what can we do to get more people involved? Number one, get them at least thinking about it.
Well, I think, first of all, in fairness to all the social media aspects and all the attention, I've seen it being addressed on channel or the Toledo stations. I see, so at least drawing attention to it is a start. I mean, which I think is a good idea. Secondly, I don't think a lot of people realize, but back in about 2007-8, the state association hired what are called directors of development. I always refer to them as DODs. And it used to be one person in a district. We all probably remember Jim Oberlander, same high school we're both from. Jim was the district officials person for the Northwest District. He oversaw officials in soccer, baseball, softball, go right down the list. I don't think Jim probably knew a whole lot about soccer. No offense. He just didn't.
Right.
But so putting him in charge of the officials for that was kind of a tough thing to do. So in about 07-08, the state association hired what are called directors of development, DODs. So it's a person that oversees the officials exclusively in that sport. Their job description included, they're paid. A lot of people don't realize that. They're paid to recruit new officials and educate officials. That's a key responsibility for those individuals. And I'm going to trust, I don't know this, I'm not there, but I trust that they are evaluated accordingly. They should be. And I think they would probably agree to that. So I think it's incumbent upon them to find creative ways to recruit new officials. Are they doing that? Well, now you broaden the scope a little bit, and they also have they have district official people now that I've seen that a couple people in Northwest Ohio, Mark Freilich, Defiance, especially in basketball, the football, I think it's the football officials, maybe it's basketball in the Southwest District. They are reaching out and having clinics.
That's good.
And I think, we have to look at the fact too, that people think, well, let's make the process easier. Let's put it all online and let's just let somebody go watch it. Well, you talk about behavior of fans and coaches.
Yeah.
That's going to have a detrimental effect.
Right.
You might get more official, but you're also going to run them out right away. So I don't know if that's the answer. But then to go one step further, and we started this, I had administrated, I think, up to 14 sports when I was an assistant at the Ohio High School Athletic Association. But we had, so obviously a lot of officials, but we started classes in high schools. And I see that they're talking about that more and more. Well, that's been in place, I know since I was there in 08. I think about 2010 or 12 is when we started doing that and having classes at schools, at high schools.
I think that's huge. By the way.
It's Bellevue, Last I knew, I've lost track of it a little bit. Bellevue was doing a great job of that. Monroe High School down in the Hamilton, Middletown area, they had one of the largest ones ever. So I see that as a huge issue. Now, again, you get them out of there and they get licensed. And some of the great training grounds, youth football, obviously junior high games, which is the only thing they can work till a certain age. But even in soccer, they can go out and make decent amount of money working all day at a soccer game. So I think the increase of those in the high schools is coming. And I think that's
really good, because I think that's I think that's huge. I know, I think she's a sophomore here in Upper Sandusky. She's a good soccer player, and she also officiates youth leagues and stuff like that. But take her and get her certified. It's a good way to make some money in college.
It sure is.
That once you get certified, I think I was a track official and for years, and once you get certified, you have to re-up a little bit, just go to meetings, but that's about all you have to do. You talked earlier about some of the detriments to it. There also are some startup costs, that you must pay. They probably have increased it, but I think it's $70 to license yourself every year. I mean, that's not a big deal. You're paying $70 for the education. You're paying $70 for, the opportunity to make a lot of money. But then, depending on the sport, you've got equipment to buy. That's an issue. Well, that was my next thing. I have two more topics, but expenses. You have to buy the uniforms. You have to drive. You have to take certain tests anymore, it seems like, and the OHSAA, sometimes you got to take other kind of tests now, and there's a lot of money involved in it, I think, to get started and to get the right unit, to get everything you need.
Yeah,
there's quite a bit of money involved, and be patient and get that back. But junior high games, but I think one of the things is, one of the problems I've always thought is nobody wants to be a grunt anymore. They all want to be vice presidents.
Right.
So they want to start out doing the high school games,
yes, they do.
The Moeller elder game. They don't want to do the Corey Ross and Van Loo game or the Macomb game. They want to do big. Of course, those are pretty, but they want to do the big, and sometimes they're not patient enough.
Right. God bless the ones that will do that. You know what I mean?
Then I think the other thing I wish people would do on my bandwagon here is, I wish like 4 or 5 guys, like in the old days in the community, 4 or 5 young guys get together and have their own crew.
Right.
And then just get together. They know each other and spend that time. I thought an ideal thing would be to have, say, we're here in Wyandotte County, have 5 guys within 15, 20 minutes of each other, all get together and go to games.
Right.
And kind of focus on one position so you're good at. Like, there's a group over in Finley, him, and I see him every year. He does basketball too. Not wedge. What's that guy's name? Tell me, big tall guy. They do games in Finley all the time, and they're really good. And then there's a guy up in Fremont, Catafus or something like that. Those guys, but they have the same crews, which is so good.
Well, I've also seen those crews bring on. I have a couple of my former students and players in Finley that have gotten into it, and even though they're that one person, that a crew has taken them on under their wing.
Yeah.
And boy, I remember broadcasting a game last year over in Ottawa, and I saw that guy, and a couple of the older guys, were on the crew, and he fit right in with them, and you could just tell they were taking care of him. And boy, there's nothing better than that when I see that. I love that.
Yeah. The boy out Lakota. He does officiating in Columbus, and he does football, high school football, and he does softball, major college softball.
Oh yeah.
And you're talking about there's just so many opportunities. And go back here, looking at my time, go back, and we just have to expose that stuff.
Right. There's one challenge. Yeah, there's one challenge that too, you know, that like soccer runs into this a lot. So does baseball, softball. If they're good and they get their license and they're young, we often joke about in soccer, if they're young, get their license and they can run. Now, I don't mean that as bad as it sounds. You know what they do? They go straight to college and they make 4 times what they're making in high school. You know, it's hard to stop that, you know.
Okay, my last question. How can you control spectators and fans? I hate the word control, but how can you work with those people?
I believe, the challenge, first of all,
Right.
remember, most of those people are those fans are either taxpayers or non-public schools. They're tuition paying people generally, at least parents are. So, in today's society, that's brought up a huge challenge because people don't want to tell people no. I mean, they might vote against a levy. I don't, maybe that's a taboo subject, but it's reality.
Yeah.
Hey, I was an athletic director. I know darn well. And they're the ones that control your jobs if you're an athletic director and a principal. Again, taboo subject, but it's real. And I know many people who have been let go of jobs in administration when they never did anything wrong. I'm smiling at that a little bit, but at the same time, because other people are controlling that for wrong reasons. So that's reality. But I don't think you can stop educating. I just don't think you can stop having the focus of that wherever you have group settings. I'm so impressed recently with Perrysburg High School. I don't care if people like them or love them. My grandchildren go to school there. They recently have an entire weekend, it was last weekend, donated or set aside. It's homecoming weekend. Homecoming weekend in a city. My point with that is they're using every opportunity of that also to educate about the values of athletics and the very things we're talking about. If we want to keep these athletics and keep them good in this city, we must root for our team and not against, that kind of thing. And, does it work 100%? No. But I think educate. Maybe people think I'm a dreamer, but and maybe I am, but I'm also a believer in educating.
Jerry Snodgrass, thank you very much for being on my program today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Now, you do a great job for high school football, and I said that at the start, but we need you. So thank you.